This is David Stark from WatcherPass.com, your website for movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Today, I'm joined by Jeong, Yeena Sung, and Charles Ryu from Happy Cleaners. We're going to talk to them in just a second, but first, let's check out the trailer. And while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. It helps me out a lot. Thank you.
How long did you have this business?
We have been here for 17 years.
다음 달에는 좀 나아지겠지.
누가 우리 편을 들어주니? 아무도 우리 편 안 들어줘.
It's not my fault you live like this!
너 엄마 아빠가 어떻게 살았는지 네가 알아?
What am I gonna leave behind? I inherited all this debt and struggle from my parents because their American dream fell apart.
Are you gonna work like this forever? Why can't you respect my decision?
야, 현이야!
You ever wonder if our family's blessed or cursed?
And this is our story, couldn't decide for me. But I'm not living wondering, yo man, if I only I'm gonna make it here cause my mama deserve it. She tried to make my life perfect with some laundry detergent.
It's just the fate of being children of immigrants. And it's even embedded in our ethnicity, in a form of a hyphen.
Thank you so much for joining me. This is Jeong, Yeena Sung, and Charles Ryu from Happy Cleaners. Happy Cleaners is a new, I guess, drama, although I think in the ads they call it like a narrative because it feels very realistic. It almost doesn't feel like a film. It feels like it tells like a very authentic story about, you know, the immigrant experience and also, you know, the differences between first generation immigrants and, you know, I guess the first generation Asian American children of those immigrants. And it's just it's just a wonderful film. It's not super happy despite being named Happy Cleaners. But it feels very real, and it has a lot of great observations that are not just about the Asian community, although there is a lot of really great Asian observations, but just kind of about the immigrant experience and the American experience. So thank you so much for joining me. And I guess the first question is, you know, how did you find out about this film? It's, you know, was there like a call with the Korean history organization? That was the Korean American history organization. There was who sponsored this film, and how did you get in there?
Story. Korean American Story.org.
Korean American Story.org. Okay.
Story Preservation Foundation. Yeah.
So did they put out like a casting call that you all you know, worked through, or was it more kind of a more traditional kind of, you know, Hollywood experience?
My understanding is that they made partnership with JB Production. That's Peter Julian Kat's company. I partnered with them, and it is a JB Production that you know, put out the casting call, and Yeena responded and all that. I don't know, with Yoon and me, because we did a short with them already. We didn't have to go through formal casting
audition process.
Yeah.
You had the inside track.
Yeah, no, I saw the casting call actually on this like Facebook group of like Asian American actors, and I actually wasn't going to show up to the audition because I was like, this project sounds really interesting, but I was also at like a low point in my life where I'm like, it never works. And you know, like there's a point in your life where you're just like, okay, I'm gonna work really hard, but like whatever I do, it's not gonna work anyways. Do I just like pass the opportunity? And I was like, I was not gonna do it because I was feeling a little lazy, but then last minute I was like, no, I should do it. This sounds interesting. I'm gonna do it. And I happened to be like the last person who auditioned for the role of Hyunhee. So it all worked out.
That was Humphrey,
yeah, like
right?
Charles said, yeah, like Charles said, Charles and I actually worked on a short film called Call Taxi, directed by Peter and Julian. And after the film was done, they told me briefly about this feature film, but they never really, you know, told me about the details about it. And one day, I remember it was like 2018, spring 2018. They called me.
17.
And they told me that 17. Yeah, I can't remember. And they called me, and yeah, they told me the script is done, and I was also at a low point of my life, like, you know, trying to survive in New York City. I was actually driving an Uber, and it was the hardest job ever.
I cannot imagine driving an Uber in
And
New
they
York City.
told me about this, so hard. I legit lost like 8 pounds in 3 days just by driving.
Oh my gosh.
And anyway, they told me that the script was done, and it sounded really interesting. So I said, oh, wow, I would love to audition for it. And they said, no, man, we're offering you the role. And I'm like, sweet. And that's how it happened.
So, I mean, I was casted first, then Hyang-hwa, the mother character. And then we got, Peter actually asked me how I felt about working with Yeena again. I said, oh, I would love to, even though if I confuse people, same father-son, but different part of the relationship. And because they thought we had such a good chemistry shooting their earlier film, and we had a hard time finding Kevin character. In the beginning, they thought, okay, we need somebody different, but they said, let's go with somebody we know, and is invited. And so we are looking for Yeena, and all three of us were there at audition because we had to find somebody that fits with three of us already, who will complete the family with real chemistry. And when Yeena walked in, even before it was all over, we sort of knew.
So were you all involved in the casting of Yeena, or did they just do a really great job of kind of trying to find someone who would fit into this this family?
I think we had like an audition round. I don't remember if it was on the same day, but I was called back in. Everybody was there. All the actors were there, and we did like an improv scene.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
We only held an audition for the role of Hyunhee and Danny, I believe.
Oh, there are some other small roles that we did auditioning, but
never mind.
Yeah. But you were part of that role because by then you're already casted.
Right.
Awesome. No, I mean this is interesting because
it's 2017 or so.
It's
so
I'm trying to remember what happened.
That was like 5 years ago. You're like, I was driving an Uber. I was like, what's driving? So, and so it sounds like you all had the scripts. You had a general idea. What was it like signing on for a film called Happy Cleaners? It wasn't like. It was such a good film, but it wasn't very happy. I was kind of expecting it to be kind of like your feel-good type movie, and then I watched. I was like, this is very authentic, but it's not. It doesn't make me feel very good at some points. It feels very kind of difficult and grueling. And what was it like signing on for that? And kind of knowing that you were going to have to go to these kind of more maybe real or raw places that you might not have done before.
I was super excited for it. I thought the title was so spot on, as in like there are some like when you look at Korean family drama, just anything on the media, like there would be scenes where like they have a quote of like something very positive, or like a nail salon. If you go to a Korean nail salon, they have something very positive, but like sometimes the atmosphere can be really tense because whatever's happening with like the people who are working there, or if it's like a family thing, like it's just like, I think it's such a good contrast of like, things are not perfect, but we are still going to say that it's, we are a family at the end of the day kind of thing.
I just want to give you a heads up. The answer to this question and some other questions later in the interview do have spoilers about the plot of the film. So if you haven't seen it yet, you should definitely check it out. It's available in theaters and digitally. If it's not yet, it will be very soon. So just go watch the film and then come back. And if you don't care about hearing about what happens in the movie and you just want to kind of hear these insights and hear this conversation, then feel free to continue. But you've been warned. Thank you.
And like, I don't think things need to be resolved in order for us to say that things are happy or things are good. Things don't have to change. But if you find a way to accept one another, which is what happens with the family and Happy Cleaners, they find a way to just like deal with one another. And that is, even if the situation doesn't change, we're here, we're okay. We don't know where we're headed, and we might get into very uncomfortable situations, but we're gonna somehow find a way to be okay with one they? So I thought the title was, or will they?
Watch the movie to find out. We don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I think.
Can you spoil? I say that's always a question I have.
I think I spoiled too much.
Yeah. You know, it's you should watch the film anyways, because there's a lot of nuance before they may or may not end up okay. But yeah, I think
You never know.
What about
that's a
for
good
you,
point. I
Yoon?
think
I have some very specific answer to Dave's question, but Yoon, would you like to add to what Yeena said about script?
I believe it's also Peter and Julian's style of writing. A lot of their works actually end with an open ending. And that's by telling, you know, it's very Korean way, like, you know, it's very common for a Korean family to not express their love, you know, verbally or physically. You know, it's just, it is what it is, and family is family. And I think they were just trying to achieve that in the film.
For me, I was super, super excited to work on this project because, you know, Korean American or Asian American stories are basically non-existent, authentic stories, right? This is 2017. It is before Crazy Asian, Rich Asian. It's before, you know, all the success with you know, new up-and-coming Asian directors, right? And when I got the script and everything, I said, finally, there is real story that represents and embodies authentically the way we live. A lot of you know, K-drama and Hollywood come up with some unreal premises to an exaggeration to tell the story. You know, that's the only thing that we think is interesting. But the courage I find in this film is that they want to show the truth as is, and that excited me. And especially my character was very unexciting character. There's not dramatic line, you know, and I'm, you know, compared to very dramatic mother, and Hyang-hwa was an awesome actor, as you know, you already noticed. And it's not a typical man, you know, hero story, but there is enough humanity and authenticity and strength of this father role and how it plays for the entire narrative of this Choi family. I was so excited about the truth of it. And I was glad to work with these phenomenal actors who were so good. And yeah.
And I think you're right. I mean, the father is a strong character, but it's not in your kind of like you said, traditional strong alpha character.
Not
at all.
But he does, you know, he shows his strength in other ways by, you know, working hard and, you know, trying to, you know, do all he can. And then later in the film, there are other things that he does. He takes the initiative on to, you know, provide and help out the family. And I think that, like you said, it's a very authentic story. I mean, I was very lucky this last week because I got to see this film, and then also I saw Minari, which is another immigrant Korean story that's kind of more historically based. So I felt like so elated to be able to see these two very authentic Asian American stories, you know, that are rightly just kind of, they feel, you know, almost like true life. I mean, I think that's what they were going for, and they feel like very real and very, you know, authentic American stories. And they both are like majority in Korean. I actually really loved that part as well. I love this, how quickly the characters, you know, change between Korean and English and in the conversations. And I think that probably is very much what an immigrant family would be like if you've got some English and some Korean, you're just kind of going back and forth in the conversation. Was that difficult for any of you, or was that kind of how you all grew up in your own families?
Yeah, it wasn't difficult because that's how I talk. Like I mix Korean and English all the time.
Same here.
Yeah, same here.
But this may not be obvious. You need to be fully bilingual to really gauge it. There are different gradations of language ability, both Korean and English. For example, like for example, Yoon's character, right? Kevin is a lot more English-based as opposed to Yeena. Yeena was a lot more Korean-based. They're both fluent, but you know, their thinking is also that way. Danny, if you understood Korean, he's like a painfully limited Korean. And that's why when he talks to Mrs. Choi and try to speak in Korean, it added like poignancy that's not obvious to those who don't know the language difficulties. And so English as well, you know, of course, the Kevin and Hyunhee, perfect English. And then I spoke with strong, you know, fluent but with accents, right? And my wife character, a little less English ability. So we just wanted to make all that very clear. That's the reality of the immigrant community.
And was that how the script was written, or did you kind of riff back and forth as you were doing the lines? You know, some of the things I thought were really interesting were you'd have like a Korean sentence with, you know, a couple English words for emphasis, you know, or maybe to express a topic that's maybe not, you know, normally a Korean subject, and then you go right back into Korean. You know, was that kind of how the lines were written, or did you just kind of do that as you were portraying the characters?
That's how it was written.
Okay. Awesome. Well, you did a great job. It was very natural. You all
I wish I could take all the credit and be like, it was me. It was the actors.
Hyang-hwa, you know, Hyang-hwa, who did Mrs. Cho, my wife's character, my character's wife, you know. In a Q&A interview in one of the festivals said, you know, I didn't have to act. This was my story. And I think that's true of all of us.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's actually a perfect segue, because my next question was going to be, you know, how much did you have to prepare for these characters, or was this just kind of a part of your own personal experience that it was just kind of natural to jump into these roles?
I mean, I actually had to work on a lot of things. Actually, English is not my first language, and Korean is my first language. So I had to work on my American accent in Korean. And also is like, you know, arrogant behavior, because Kevin, I mean, I do have, you know, that Kevin's quality in me, but the things that really stressed on this character before we shot this was you gotta have this Flushing accent. You gotta really, you know, show them the you know, that rebellious behavior. So that's really the things that I had to work on the character.
And you had to work on your guns, because you had some sleeveless shirts on a lot. So
yeah,
you had
man.
to work on those biceps.
And the haircut.
That was an awesome haircut.
And my fake earrings and everything.
You know, Charles, was this were these, you know, characters for you, or, you know, was it kind of more aspects of your own experience?
It's aspects of my experience as an observer of Korean American life, not my own life story at all. And yes, there are certain patterns that are related to looking at my father, right? But again, very different. And personality-wise, you probably noticed by now from interview, my natural personality and the personality of Misa Choi are completely different, right?
Very different, yeah.
Yeah, and so just like you, and I had to create a character, going through step by step, you know, following Uta Hagen's book. Okay, I literally went back to Uta Hagen's book and went through the steps to create the character.
I think for me, it was a little bit of both. I also come from a very different background than Hyunhee. I'm also not an immigrant. I was born and raised in Korea. Also, my first language is Korean as well. So I had to, but like emotionally speaking, I felt very like in line with Hyunhee. I had similar experiences that Hyunhee had. So there are a lot of like parts where I felt like, oh my God, this is so me. I would say I said this before, you know, but in different circumstances. And then there were parts of Hyunhee where I was like, oh my God, she is so much more mature than I am. And like, I'm the younger one in my family. So I had to think about my sister a lot, because I think she's definitely the one who's more practical. She could be the breadwinner if she wanted to. She's very successful. And I'm just kind of like, I want to do what I want to do. I have my desires. Like I'm more like Kevin. Because if I were Kevin, like if I were Kevin and I looked at Hyunhee, I would think to myself like, I don't want to live a life like that. Like I know you're being responsible, but like it's my life. I want to pursue what I want to pursue. So like there were things that I had to kind of balance out, but it wasn't like, it didn't feel like, oh my God, like I have to do so much research, or like this is a completely different character to me, like this is a transformational, like it didn't feel like that, because just my way in was just to be on the same page emotionally with her, and that was just like, and it was easy. It just felt smooth.
Yeah, well, I think that your character had aspects of your rebellious nature as well. I mean, she was very,
yeah, for sure,
but she did have, you know, aspects of that clearly came through in the film. So
David, I forgot to mention also, I was also born in Korea and immigrated to the United States, you know, as during my late teenage days.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, in terms of identification, I would identify more with Yoon, because what he went through, you know, I would, there's a one line that, you know, when Yoon, this is, well, not Yoon, Kevin, this is the father. I keep telling people, when I was Kevin's age, 19, around that time, I said almost identical words to my own dad.
Oh, wow.
So it was very raw. I mean, I did cry a lot reading the script, and I cried a lot during the filming. Not on the scene, unless I was called to cry, but afterwards, it was too much emotion because things were too raw. It's like, as I said, collectively, I've been observing and living some part of it for you know, my 40, how long have I been in the States? 43, 44 years in America, right?
How old are you?
I'm 61, I'll be 60.
I'm just kidding.
No. He's in his early 30s.
It's all movie makeup. It's magic.
Oh, the difficulty was that I look and behave much younger than my own age. So try to be late 50s, you know, as the character called for. I really had to try very hard. I start eating unhealthy, so my skin color is not as clear as it is usually for me. I don't do makeups, but just healthy life, healthy living style, right?
Yeah, I've been preparing for a role too. That's what I've been doing as well.
All my life.
Yeah, I actually look and act older than I really am, so it's a nice balance. That's you know, that's a really interesting point. I mean, like there is a lot of very kind of raw observations about, you know, the immigrant experience, and maybe even some things that nowadays are, I think, more apparent. Like, you know, there was a little bit of kind of a racist, it wasn't overt, but there was a little bit of racism, a little bit of kind of like otherness in this film that was filmed a little bit ago. And, you know, it's kind of sad, but also just a realization that now it seems like we've kind of that's come to a head, and it's become much more common. You know, hopefully we will see if that changes, but it is, you know, some of these aspects are things that, you know, you must have experienced growing up, and I think all of you probably have experienced in your life, and that must have been tough to film and tough to kind of like, you know, present on screen.
Yeah.
So you should see the film to realize, you know, the things that happen that are unfair to immigrants. You know, so Charles and you kind of already established some sort of family relationship, but, you know, was there anything that you, 4 or 5, you know, of the family members did to kind of establish that family dynamic, or was it just kind of jumping in and everyone kind of got into their roles very easily? Was there anything that you all did beforehand to kind of, you know, get into that family mindset?
We kind of clicked, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
yeah.
We just kind of,
yeah,
it was amazing.
Yeah, I think there was just
No, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say we never really had like that many rehearsal process either. I believe we only had like one proper rehearsal, like the table read. But, you know, but other than that, we just clicked.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I thought we had a lot more. My memory is about at least 4, not all of them, but
that's the other movie that you did, Dad. I told you.
The taxi movie.
But anyway.
But I think one of the reasons why we collectively clicked so easily is because they cast so well. Like when I first walked into the room for a reading, and this was also the day that we shot the poster, the family picture for the poster. And we look like a family in the photo. That was like the first day that we all met. But the thing is, like when I walked in, I saw a father and a mom, and you and I knew him before, like we were in a short film before once. So like, it's just, I don't know. It just, the atmosphere was like, right. I was like, okay, dad, mom, younger brother. Good.
So funny was the family portrait. I used it as my Facebook profile picture when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
And my priest friend from Rome sent me like, Charles, are you married with with adult kids now?
We're the hidden children.
The secret family.
I know of. It was funny.
Is it still your Facebook profile picture?
Oh no, of course not.
He's abandoned us.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're on our own now.
Deadbeat father. So one thing that I noticed in the film, and made me miss being able to go places and eat things, is just there was so much amazing food. I assume that was all realistic. What was that like to film? Because I think you were actually kind of eating as you were filming, which I don't know if that's normal, but there were some amazing feasts that just made me very sad that I can't go and get good Asian food easily anymore.
It's so great. Like just imagine being on set and it's not like the smell of sweat you smell. It's like Korean food, and really good Korean food.
Yes.
And like, yes, let's do more takes. Yes, somebody make a mistake so I can eat more.
But at the same time, though,
I kept on eating.
We had to.
Your method acting, it's important. So.
Yeah, I know you and he like sped out some things because you were like, I'm full.
I have very small stomach. Okay, I can't eat that.
Okay, well.
I remember putting on my Facebook, when we had that banquet scene and had eat so much, and when you had a lunch break, they had a phenomenal spray for lunch for the. Yeah. I couldn't touch it. I just couldn't.
Oh yeah,
the food. I said, "Gee, the suffering of artists."
Wow, really? I had a different experience. Like I ate all the lunch. I ate all the food that was provided. Yeah, of course.
I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do either. I definitely skipped a few lunches. Yeah.
What?
I bet you're all regretting that now that it's tough to get good food.
It's true.
And so Yoon, there was a scene also where the Kevin character was preparing just a really great meal. I was wondering, I couldn't see your face in that. Was that you?
That was me cooking. Oh. I'm still mad about Peter and Julian that they didn't show my face cooking.
Yeah, I was like,
a lot of people actually asked me. Yeah, no, we couldn't afford it. But yeah, that was my knife skills, and
they were very on point. Did you have
great cook?
Yeah,
actually great.
I love to cook. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Did you cook any of the other food, or was it just that scene where were you secretly cooking in the back?
No, I wish, but I believe that was actually Peter's mom who cooked all the Korean food.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Catering, some Peter's mom, and also Hyang-hwa.
Yeah.
Used to be a hunter. And so she would actually doctor it, make it look better and tastier.
So the film deals a lot with, I guess kind of this balancing act, or this conflict between kind of duty and dreams. And I wonder, sounds like maybe Yeena hasn't had this, but is this something that any of you have had to kind of like deal with in your in your family life, kind of dealing with duty to your family versus like trying to pursue your dreams, maybe doing something that's not as I don't know, lucrative or safe or productive?
I mean, my parents were very supportive of me, which is nice. I mean, they had moments when they were like, yes, she loves acting, but she's not going to do that. Like it's just one of her favorite hobbies kind of thing. But they were actually very supportive throughout. I think like in terms of relationships though, I think that's when my parents gets more hands-on D, you know what I'm saying. And that's exactly what Hyunyi went through, and that I like really related to. Yes, I mean it's this thing of like, you want to be with someone that your parents will be happy about, that you know, like typically Korean parents want you to be with someone who's like already successful, so that you don't have to experience any financial hardship, whatever. But then you don't meet people that way. You don't like meet someone because somebody's already so far off in their careers. You just meet them because they're a good person, right? But it's just this thing of like, parents experience something different because they've lived longer and they've had more difficulties. And in the case of Happy Cleaners, both of their parents experience like financial burden, so they don't want Hyunyi to go through that. So I think that's where like the expectations come in, and then Hyunyi wants to fill that expectation, and she has experienced what it's like to be in an environment where you have to provide for yourself, not just yourself, you have to provide for your parents. Like, so then I think there definitely is that pressure, and that it's not just something to ignore, but then at the end of the day, like, you choose what is good for you. And I think that's what Hyunyi did, and that's what I'm going to do. And
or did she? Watch the film to find out.
Or did she? We never know. Am I spoiling too much?
I know this kind of interview is very hard. How much do we have to tell, you know, to make sense of what we're talking about? And
it's always a balancing act. I'll put a little spoiler warning at the start of the first spoiler to tell people to go watch it. So no, but I mean, it's a good point that, like, that's one thing I love about this film, is at the start it just feels like the parents are kind of overbearing, and then kind of as you go through and mostly Hyung-hwa's character kind of opens up more about why she is this way, and that, you know, that led to some very painful scenes, but also just, you know, a very relatable kind of understandable attitude that she has. So kind of on a related note, I did notice the kind of parents trying to meddle, maybe is one word, or maybe steer their children towards different, you know, either careers or mates or things like that. Is that something that any of you all have experienced? And you don't have to answer if you don't want to. If you want to just smile and not say anything, that's perfectly fine as well.
I think like I haven't experienced that personally, but even if it's not for parents, I think there definitely is that culture within the society of everybody knows what is the right path. Like if you go to Korea, all the cars, like the color of the cars, it's either black or white or gray. Like it's not like you're rarely gonna see like this dark green car just out of nowhere. It's everybody kind of has a similar idea of what is good and what is the right path. So if everybody else knows it, then of course you know it yourself. So I think that's something that I experience, having, even if I don't have anybody to put that pressure on me or to have that expectation on me, I have internalized it. So then it's like I'm constantly comparing myself, like for example, like I'm an actor and a lot of my friends are not actors and they're getting to a certain point in their lives. Like if you're in a company, if you're working in a company for a couple of years, then you start out as like a little baby intern, and then now you're a senior manager or whatever. You step the ladder and you can actually like see it. Whereas for actors, you are going somewhere. It's just that it's so invisible that like sometimes I think to myself like, oh my God, somebody just started acting 2 months ago and I'm in the same place as them, even though I have, you know, devoted myself to this career. So like that it's a balancing act. It's so hard. I like it's tough. I'm still in it, so.
But you know, there is something to be said for, you know, pursuing your dreams, right?
Yeah,
Like,
of course.
you know, this whole movie website and YouTube channel is a wonderful, fun hobby. I don't know if it'll ever actually make me successful, but it's something I love doing, and it's something that's
Right.
fun to kind of, and it gives you, you know, facets. And also during quarantine, this has been a fantastic chance to talk to people. Like, you know, you hear these stories about people that haven't talked to anyone in months or years, and that's completely understandable. But for me, it's allowed me to kind of like meet people and, you know, get views of the outside world and interact. So, you know, there's tangible benefits, even if it's not, you know, financial or successful. So.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, you choose what is most important to you. Yeah.
Unless your parents are super meddling, and then you choose what's most important to them.
Yes.
There was one line in this film. I mean, there's a ton of great lines, but there was one line that kind of really stuck to me. It was in one scene when, you know, maybe it wasn't overt, but there was maybe some implied racism. And, you know, the Hyang-hwa's character says, you know, a line along the lines of, "This is our home, this is our country, but to them, we're always foreigners." I thought that was, you know, such a strong line. I just wanted to recognize that, you know, this film goes to places where I think maybe some movies don't, and I think it's a really important kind of accurate portrayal of a lot of people's experiences, not just Korean Americans, but a lot of immigrants' experiences that even, and we're seeing that now today. Hopefully it'll disappear, but it's something that's become more important to recognize and more apparent in the last few years. So I don't know if that line, if that, you know, that experience speaks to any of you, but you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. All right. One thing I also really liked is
what's portrayed is actually not only real, but it's much more toned down.
Yeah.
What we go through is a lot more intense, a lot more volatile, even a lot more violent. So that's a reality.
Yeah, and I think that was an important.
Like this will help people to recognize it and find ways to, you know, overcome.
Yeah, I think it definitely was an important scene. The scene itself felt a little odd at the start, but then kind of when you start digging into what it was portraying, it definitely was an important thing to leave in the film and to kind of showcase, because that is probably a very real and very large part of this family and a lot of immigrants' experiences.
Yeah.
One thing I also really liked is the film has this, you know, very kind of delicate, authentic style, and then during the credits there's this awesome rap song that plays. There's a couple scenes where there's rap music. I don't know if any of you know the artist, but was that a Korean rapper? And does anyone have any insight on where that music came from and why that was included as well? Because I thought it was a nice end to this film.
Year of the Ox. Yeah.
His name is Lyrics. He's also a Korean American rapper.
And I think he's like one of the engineers. He was part of the post-production. When he came and saw it, he was so moved. He went home and wrote that lyric and recorded and sent it to Peter and Julian. Looking at your film, it was like once they assembled the whole thing, it's before even the first cut, right? I don't know exactly what his role was in post-production, but he was so moved, he wrote that. And when Peter and Julian said, "Can we use it as our theme song?"
he was probably like, "Yes, that's why I wrote it. Please do."
and then added other songs like what's known as Kevin's song, which is when Kevin is doing his thing, smoking all that, there's another rap coming out, and that's their music as well. That's my understanding. Yeah.
And I believe his parents also owned cleaners.
Oh, really?
He was still related to this film, I think. Yeah,
because that song fit perfectly. It felt like it was written specifically for this film. That's amazing that he saw it and then like just went back and, you know, was so inspired that he wrote the end credits and then also some more music in the film. That's awesome. All right, so now I'd like to move. I call it the lightning round. It's just very short, lightweight questions that kind of relate to the film, and I just want to see how your experiences relate to the characters. We already talked about probably a lot of them, so we'll see. We'll see how many of them are still relevant. I guess the first question is: have any of you worked in a dry cleaners?
Yep. My family, that was our primary means of survival.
Oh.
In Los Angeles, dry cleaning drop-off store, not even, so we are even one class lower than that.
All right. Where do you all get your clothes dry cleaned now? Or, I mean, the answer could also be, I haven't dry cleaned my clothes in over a year, but where do you all get your clothes
Neither
dry
have
cleaned?
Yeah, that's my answer. I haven't dry cleaned anything. I just hand wash things because it costs money.
That's true.
There in the neighborhood, in my neighborhood, there is a Korean American run dry cleaner called VIP Cleaners. That's where I go. And I told her about this film coming out, and she's interested.
Perfect.
Oh.
You should
I'm in LA right now, which means I only wear t-shirts and jeans.
That's true. T-shirts and shorts and sandals.
Shorts. Yeah, exactly.
What did your parents want you to be when you were growing up?
Well, my parents wanted me to become a judge.
Oh.
And my name in full name in Korean is Yoon Hyung. Yoon means ethics and Hyung means equal. But I chose acting.
There's still time. You can you could play a judge. You could play a
man,
judge.
I'm too old now. I can play a judge. Yes.
Actually, my parents expect me to be a scholar in humanities field, and that's what I thought I would do myself. Being an actor is actually accident. I mean, I did go acting school, but not to become an actor, but to improve my English. English is my second language. I wanted to get rid of my accent and learn to speak naturally, and that's how I went to acting school in New York City. My dad is the one who suggested I should study philosophy, and because I had the philosophical streak in me even as a kid. So that was my college major in philosophy.
Huh. That's not your kind of typical Asian
right.
parent.
My parents were very atypical, but they were dismayed that I was not pursuing PhD. And
there we go.
Luckily, my younger sister became a professor. I said, "Come on, Kathy became a professor, so don't bother me."
I mean, I think with me, I was always artsy. So they knew that I was somehow gonna end up in the arts. But so my mom kind of wanted me to be like a musical director because I've played music, played piano, and I'm really interested in music. But my dad was like, hey, you're going to be an artist, but you need to support yourself financially. So why don't you go to like be a dentist? Because then, yes, you will study for a very long time. But after that, it's not like you're working at an emergency center. You have your hours, and then you'll have your free time. So I was like, no. One, I won't get accepted. But yes.
Yeah. All good choices, I would say. So what is the worst way that your name has been spelled at a coffee shop or a restaurant where they're, calling out your names?
Oh, well,
I always make sure to spell it.
For
whenever
me,
I go to Starbucks and they ask me, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, whenever they ask me for my name, I always say Yoon, Y-U-N. I always say that, so they don't misspell it. But they still say Yun, not Yoon.
Well, people mispronounce my name all the time because it's spelled with two E's. It's actually Yeena Sung, but people say Yeena all the time. You did too. but it's understandable because it's spelled that. It's I would read it that way if I weren't myself. So that doesn't really bother me. But it's for Starbucks. There was one time when somebody was just like one grande coffee for Yoda. Yoda, and I was like, that's not me. And then it was me. I was like, but that's kind of cool though.
That is cool. Yeah,
I was called a Yoda.
My American name is Charles, but actually I didn't use Charles officially until I went to college. I became legal name toward the end of my college. I have a Korean name, which is Young Chul and Chul. People couldn't really pronounce it, so they started calling me Charlie, Charlie. So it became my name, Charles. So when I got naturalized, I changed to Charles Young Chol Ryu. So my Korean name became middle name, which is typical for a lot of Korean Americans. So I don't get problem with Charles. It's my last name. People always mess.
I think Ryu would be easy, right? Just like Ryu, like in Street Fighter. And it's,
Those who've done those Street Fighter, computer, they get it, and they assume I'm a Japanese.
That's what I thought. I was like, oh, he wasn't Japanese.
But it became Ryu, and sometimes when you write Ryu becomes Rice or Ryan. It's like, so I have to tell them it's Ryu, it's one syllable, like rheumatism, and they get it.
There we go, like rheumatism.
a lot of people drop Y, say Ru,
Ru,
or Ryu or Raya, whatever. Yeah.
I mean, my name is David, and I often get Davis or something along that line. So it happens to even American names, born American names.
Yeah.
If you could open a food truck, what kind of food truck would it be?
Dessert, Korean dessert. Yeah.
You'd have to go to LA for that, probably do better in LA.
Yeah.
Korean street food truck. Just import from Korea what they do on the street. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I love to have that in New York City. Like tteokbokki and odeng and hot dog and all those things.
Yeah.
I always thought Korean fusion, but now I like authentic Korean more.
You got too much Korean fusion in LA.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was the birth of the Kogi taco truck, so it kind of exploded there.
Yeah, true that. Yeah.
So if you could run off and do your dream job, what would it be? I mean, you could just say it's acting. I mean, that could be a perfectly fine answer.
Acting.
Excellent.
Actor who has a lot of power.
And a dental
a power
practice.
to power to change things.
And an active dental practice. Yes.
Sure.
Charles, would you become
dream job? I have a dream situation where I could spend just somehow finance is taken care of, so that I could read and study, play piano, and once in a while act in great films like Happy Cleaners. That would be my dream condition.
You do have a very kind of philosophical mind. I like that.
I mean, if you could see my apartment, it's wall to wall, ceiling to floor books. So I mean, yeah, that's my lifestyle.
All right. So in the film, Kevin wanted to go to LA to kind of fulfill his dream. If you could pack up and go anywhere, where would your kind of dream location be? It doesn't have to be practical for like a job, just wherever.
Amsterdam.
Wow.
Just like anywhere that's not New York, just somewhere where I would have a plane to travel right now.
Or like south of France. So nice.
It's Nice.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
I mean, for me, I love New York City. I get excited just being in the city. I just moved in the middle of pandemic. I was in upstate New York.
Oh, wow.
And when everybody's leaving New York City, I moved in back, 30 years after I left. When I was a young adult, I was here, but I was upstate, I moved back.
Lately, I've been thinking a lot about London or Barcelona. Yeah.
Barcelona.
Both good spots.
I don't know, maybe I want to go back to Seoul. It's not that city I was born, it's very different. I don't know, Berlin always excites me.
Yeah.
Berlin excites me every time I visit there.
Sounds like the theme is
Berlin was awesome. Yeah.
Sounds like the theme is just anywhere, like just
Anywhere, just
somewhere.
yeah, I just want to go out.
I love traveling. I've been to all the different parts of the world, not all, but some. And I literally enjoyed every city I visited, small town, big cities. I mean, I lived in Rome for 2 years, right? Rome,
Oh, wow.
Italy, and I absolutely loved living in Italy. So.
All right, all good choices. So the film had, we already kind of talked about it, there was so much great Asian food. What's your, I guess go-to Asian food, or if you could have one thing right now, what would you pick?
That's so hard.
I love Japanese izakaya. Get some yakitori and
That's a
beer,
good call.
of course.
Wait, are we talking about favorite foods or like Korean food?
You can say what you would like. Mine would be sushi, because I like sushi, but I'm inherently cheap, so I don't buy it very much. So I would do sushi.
Any kind of dumplings and anything that has tofu in it, like Korean marinated tofu is one of my favorite dishes.
I don't know how to answer those questions because I don't have one favorite food. I love varieties. As long as I have access to all kinds of varieties, I'm fine. I always enjoy local food. If I have to choose one food, I guess it would be Korean food. But even in Korean food, I like tang. Tang is like a casserole, soupy food. That's good for your stomach. It's just like hajangguk, like,
Good for digestion.
Yeah.
Charles, you just sound like you just love life, and I love that perspective. It's just you're very kind of excited about everything, which is fantastic.
I'm alive. I'm grateful.
Oh.
I mean, I woke up.
Cry now.
I was just breathing. I look outside and there's this beautiful snow and all that. I just smile. I said, okay, I'm grateful.
So there was a line in the film about someday you'll miss your mother's cooking. Is that true for any of you, or do you all still are you able to get cooking from your mother, or well, you don't have to say if your mother's a bad cook. I want to ask that question, but
I miss it a lot.
I do miss my mom's cooking now that she's no longer with us. Yeah, I do miss my mom's cooking.
Yeah, I do too.
all right, we all miss our mother's cooking. Last question: have you had rice today?
Yes.
Yes.
I have not actually. I'm going to though.
You still have time.
It's not dinner time yet in LA, so.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
All right, so and the film comes out in select theaters on February 5th, and then it comes out digitally on February 12th. So I imagine you'll be promoting the film and kind of raising awareness of it. But I guess what all is next for you? Do you have any projects on the horizon, or any, I would say trips, but that's not really going to be a thing for a little bit longer. So do you have any projects or interests on the horizon?
Well, I'm continuing to audition. Hopefully anything that I audition for, I'll get it.
Just audition last.
Yes, whatever I'm auditioning for, I have my fingers crossed. And yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, same here. Keep auditioning. Keep
pursuing that dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to audition. I'll just wait for the role to come. Just like it happened with Call Taxi and Happy Cleaners. I get spoiled. So I just told Peter and Julian, why don't you write another script and put me in? I don't have to lead.
So will this be the perpetual dad in their films?
I said, but except that role is what I said. I've done 3 with them, and all of them are dad.
I mean, if you want that automatic spot, you got reprise your dad role. So that's
what they said, because there are so few actors who could do that. I said, oh.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. As I said, Happy Cleaners comes out February 5th in select theaters and February 12th digitally. It's a very kind of raw and realistic and very authentic film about not just the Asian experience, although it is very heavily Asian influence, but just kind of the American immigrant experience. So you should definitely check it out. It'll be digital, so everyone can watch it from the comfort of their homes. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
That was Jeong, Yeena Sung, and Charles Ryu from Happy Cleaners. Happy Cleaners is being released in limited markets on February 5th, 2021, and then digitally on February 12th, 2021. So if it's nearby, you can check it out in theaters, or you can wait a week and see it in the comfort of your own home. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot and makes sure all my new interviews go straight to you. And as always, please go to watchapass.com for all your movie reviews, interviews, and recommendations. Thank you.